do some review with you. What loan is insured? FHA. So good job if you picked FHA. That's the only correct answer. It stands for Federal Housing Administration Loans. So when people say they're getting an FHA loan, that's what we're talking about. Okay. Next question. So what loan can be guaranteed? Again, what loan can be guaranteed? VA is the correct answer. So if you put VA, you did good. VA is the correct answer. Yes. Okay. All right, next question. When you die and you leave no will or qualified distributees, what will happen? Again, when you die and leave no will or qualified distributees, what will happen? Here's the question. What can happen? So the correct answer is escheat. Escheat is the correct answer. Here's your next question. When you hear the words subdivision and development, when you hear subdivision and development, you should think of what? These are your trigger words, ladies and gentlemen. Subdivision and development, you should think of what? The answer is indeed Article 9A. Good job if you said Article 9A. Article 9A is what you want to know if you see subdivision and development. Okay. Next question. Taking private property for public use. That's your trigger words. Taking private property by the government for public use. What should you think of? Again, taking a private property by the government for a public benefit. So it's the right of eminent domain. Again, the right of eminent domain through a condemnation suit. So it's the right of eminent domain through a condemnation suit. And it is one of the police powers of government, but that's not the answer to the question. It's the right of eminent domain through a condemnation suit. That's what you got to know. Okay. So when you hear the trigger word for wetlands, you should think of what? There's two things that should come to mind when you hear the word wetlands. Army Corps of Engineers and the DEC. Those are the two answers we're looking for. When you hear wetlands, think of the Army Corps of Engineers and the DEC. Okay. When you hear the phrase change to a will, you should think of what? Change to a will. Starts with a C. Answer is codicil. Codicil is a change to a will. Again, this could be a multiple choice throwaway option, but you never know. Codicil is a change to a will. When we tell you that the written word takes precedence over the oral agreement, the written word takes precedence over the oral agreement, you should think of what term? Written word takes precedence over the oral agreement. Starts with a P, what we're looking for. The answer to the question is the rule of parole evidence. The rule of parole evidence. Okay? When you hear taxes for co-ops, what taxes are most associated with cooperatives? What taxes are most associated with cooperatives? Starts with the letter F, ladies and gentlemen. The answer is flip taxes. Flip taxes are associated with cooperatives. Again, flip taxes are associated with cooperative type buildings. Very good. Good job, folks. But the highest wood framing member right here is the ridge board. So that's the highest wood form. So sometimes it's just called a ridge. Sometimes it's the ridge board. Ridge, that's what you gotta know. Ridge is the highest and the lowest is the sill. Okay? Over any openings, whether you have a door or a window, the piece of wood that's above the door or window opening, we call that a header. It's called a header or lintel, L-I-N-T-E-L. So this header or lintel is that piece of wood that's over any door or window. The wood that's above and below it that are not full studs, like here and then beneath, we call that cripple or jack studs, J-A-C-K, cripple or jack studs. Please make sure you know this. Proration, the allocation or dividing of certain money items at closing. The key to remember about prorations is that the person who uses it generally needs to pay for it. Industrial property owners generally pay non-homestead taxes. A graduated lease is an agreement under which a tenant and landlord agree to a periodic adjustment of monthly payments. For example, the agreement may reflect an increase in the tenant's payments due to market conditions or an increase in the value of the leased property. So apartment information vendors can show apartments for rent and collect advance fees, unlike real estate licensees that can only be paid after providing the service. So what do I mean by that? Real estate agents can't collect money from people in advance of providing the service. Do you know what I mean? In other words, you sell a house and then you get paid after closing. So a non-conforming mortgage is a home loan that does not adhere to government-sponsored enterprise guidelines. So therefore cannot be resold to agencies like Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. These loans often carry higher interest rates than conforming mortgages. So usually we use a non-conforming mortgage for people who are self-employed. They don't have easy income to prove. Next, we talk about asbestos. Asbestos is found in some vinyl floor tiles and the backing on vinyl sheet flooring and adhesives. People have seen questions about this, especially towards the middle of last year. This was a popular question. Don't know when you're going to see it again. Hot water and steam pipes in older homes may also be coated with asbestos material or covered with an asbestos blanket or tape. Oil and coal furnaces and door gaskets may also have asbestos insulation. So we share all of this with you just so you know if you get a question about asbestos, where it's typically found. Next item here, very common state exam question. Mental disabilities was added as a protected class in 1988. That's what you need to know, 1988. Here's another question. So who is exempt from the education requirements to earn a real estate license? So New York State attorneys, that's the answer. You do need to know what a bridge loan is. Bridge loan is a short-term loan that's obtained to meet an immediate financing requirement. It's often used to fill in an immediate cash need, such as a down payment for buying a house. So we talk about a mechanic's lien next. Mechanic's lien includes not only services provided on a home or for a business, but also for any supply expenses incurred but not paid for by the owner. who the mechanic's lien is placed against. So age is not a protected class under the Federal Fair Housing Act. Something we want to make sure you know. Age is not a protected class under the Federal Fair Housing Act. Next. In 1988, mental and physical disabilities were added to the Federal Fair Housing Act. New York loves to ask this question. Mental and physical disabilities. So pro forma statements are operating statements adjusted to reflect a potential change in income and expenses based on the investor's knowledge of the real estate market. So if your active real estate license expires, you have 2 years to still do your 22.5 hours of education in order to reactivate it. After 2 years, you're going to have to retake the state exam. You only need to repeat your 75-hour course or 77-hour course if it's later than 8 years since you completed it. Portfolio income, money received from investments, dividends, interest, and capital gains. Passive income is income earned from rents, royalties, and stakes in limited partnerships. Active income is the hard-earned money that one earns in exchange for performing a service. You would get typically a W-2 or a 1099 for commissions. This shows up about 4 times a year. Umbrella insurance refers to a liability insurance policy that is in excess of specified other policies in place. We conclude with PCBs. So PCBs are often found in older electronic equipment and transformers. So P stands for PGI, potential gross income. So E actually stands for EGI, effective gross income. So N stands for net operating income. So we need to know, so P equals PGI, potential gross income. The way we get to the effective gross income is we subtract vacancy and collection costs. You need to know how to get to EGI, ladies and gentlemen. So we subtract vacancy and collection costs to come up with EGI. So to get from the E to the N in the Penn formula, we subtract annual expenses. These are the annual expenses that it takes to run the property. They include the utilities for common areas, landscaping, snow removal, and more. So when we subtract out those annual expenses, it leaves us with a net operating income. That's always an annual figure, ladies and gentlemen. So 2 things again to share with you. Net operating income is always an annual figure, and you never count the mortgage payments as an expense. So we never count the mortgage payments on a property as an expense. So your clue, ladies and gentlemen, is not ideal at a property. Not ideal at a property. What is the term we're looking for? The answer is indeed functional obsolescence. And here's what you need to know about functional obsolescence. It's a reduction in the usefulness of a property due to factors that are within it. Common examples include walking through a bedroom to get to another bedroom, or not having a shower head and only a tub in the bathroom, when having one would be common in the neighborhood. So functional obsolescence. Your clue is money, money, money. So, if you said passive income, you did great. The definition you need to know for test purposes is income earned from rents, royalties, and stakes in limited partnerships. That's passive income. Your clue is don't fail this test. Okay, if you said percolation test, you are correct. And here's what you need to know. It's a test to determine the water absorption rate of soil for homes with septic systems. So we typically do percolation tests for properties that are in rural areas. Okay. Next question. Your clue is don't mess with the IRS. Oh no, I hear a crying baby. You know what that means? That means nobody had the right answer. Don't mess with the IRS. What could this possibly be? Well, I'm going to show you the answer right now. Schedule C. This is where you list your income and expenses as a real estate agent for tax purposes. You gotta know Schedule C, ladies and gentlemen. Again, where we list our income and expenses. You'll be using this every year you're in real estate and you have a 1099. Okay. Next question. Your clue is don't rain on me. And if you said umbrella insurance, you did great. Here's a definition you should know. It refers to a type of liability insurance policy that is in excess of specified other policies that may be in place. So this picks up where other policies leave off, and many landlords have this on their rental properties. All right. We've got one more. Your clue is, help us, Fed, help us. And if you said inflation, you did great. Inflation is defined as the sustained upward movement in the overall price level of goods and services in the economy. It has the effect of devaluing a currency. But you're doing great. Fantastic job. Study like your life depends on it for the state exam, and you'll have no problem.